How do people fight dirty? The first thing that I thought of immediately was silent treatment. I feel like if you're fighting or arguing with somebody and you give them the silent treatment, that can cause like an even bigger fight. Um, when you are like expressing how you feel to somebody and they're just not even giving you the time of day, that can be really frustrating. If we're talking about physical fighting, I would definitely say hair grabbing or like hair pulling. A lot of girls do that in fights, and it's definitely fighting dirty because you're not giving the other person the same amount of like chance to win the fight because you're yanking them by the hair, which can make it hard for you to make a swing or get out of a certain position for you to hit, which I think is very wrong. I think that any kind of like a verbal attack in an argument or fight is a dirty way of fighting, just because you can just be like arguing, fighting with somebody, but the second that you start throwing verbal attacks in there, like calling somebody names or maybe talking about the way they look or their family, that can escalate it a lot. Which my next one kind of goes along with that last one, bringing up the past. Um, that can really hurt somebody and escalate a situation or a conflict. If, especially if you have like a hard past and you've been through a lot, it's not something that you should bring up because it's just going to escalate it a lot more, especially if it was something bad. And then my last one is talking over somebody. When I'm in a conflict or an argument or a fight with somebody, the last thing you want is for somebody to talk over you. You're not going to feel heard. You're going to feel like you can't get a word out, and it's very stressful and very annoying. And that is like definitely in my top list of how people fight dirty, is just when you talk over them because you can't let them get a word out. So I have a list of my productive conflict management ideas, and my number one is active listening. Active listening is so important in a conflict and also in solving a conflict. If you are not listening, the conflict or the conflict solution, it's not going to happen. It's just going to get worse. It's very important to always be listening because the person that you're fighting or arguing with the conflict, they want to be heard as well as you want to be heard. My next one is just, for me personally, is just staying calm. If you're not staying calm, things are just going to escalate. I think staying calm is kind of goes along with active listening, because if you're just calm or if you're not calm, you're not going to be in the right headspace to be listening to somebody talk. My next one is not having judgment. In a conflict or a fight, you shouldn't be judging the other person. You need to just be listening and going pretty much just like staying present in the conversation. Judging them isn't going to get you or them anywhere. Meaning if they're judging you, because how are you supposed to solve conflict if you're just thinking negatively of the person or judging what they did or said? Because in a conflict, you can sometimes say things that you don't mean, which you can't really judge because we've all done it. My next one is compromise. This and active listening are my favorite top two. Compromise is so important. You may not always be like super happy with it, but in the end, it's very important to compromise, just so that the conflict can not escalate into long term. My next one is asserting yourself in the conversation, which kind of goes with active listening. You just want to be present. You want to make sure that you're putting your input out there. You're not just staying quiet. If you're talking to somebody, you just want to make sure that you're saying how you feel so that what you're going through is also part of the conversation. It's not only about whoever you're talking to. Everybody's feelings are important. And my last one is eye contact. Eye contact is super, super important with managing a conflict. If I'm talking to somebody and I'm just looking over here the whole time and I'm not looking them in the eyes and showing that pretty much like I care or that I even want to be in this conversation, because if somebody is just sitting there looking out into space, not really looking at you, then you're gonna just think that they really don't care. It can be, you might be talking to somebody and kind of just like looking off, or when like you're speaking how you feel, you might make eye contact but then lose it, which I do all the time. But it's just important to maintain the eye contact. I personally have 4 main unproductive strategies that I've caught myself using. My first one is raising my voice in a conflict. This kind of goes with how in my productive conflict management, I was saying how you have to stay calm, but a lot of the times a fight or a conflict can escalate so bad to where you're not feeling heard and you just want to feel like what you're saying is being listened to. So you feel like you need to overpower the other person's voice, which I think is a bad strategy. And it's a very bad, like, characteristic to have about yourself, even though you're not doing it on purpose. Another one of my unproductive strategies is avoidance. I use this especially at work. If I can avoid a conflict, I will, which isn't always the best because you want to make sure that they get solved, but I would so much rather just avoid it and leave it and not even bother it than confront somebody or, tell on somebody and then get your manager involved. I'd rather just not even be a part of it at all, which, how is a conflict supposed to get solved if you avoid it? My next one is blame. I have in the past tended to just blame somebody, pretty much just putting all the blame on them, but I've gotten very good at saying, like, yeah, you might have been wrong, but so was I. Like, we're both in the wrong. So it's very important to make sure that you're not putting the blame all on one person, because that's not productive at all. You're not really going to get anywhere because you were also in the wrong. And my last one is having a poor attitude. If you're trying to solve something, or if you're fighting with somebody, having a poor attitude is just going to escalate that even more. You have to be, even though it is hard, you have to try to be positive and open-minded in a fight or a conflict, or where is it going to go? Because if you're just being negative, that's not going to help at all. My number one thing in conflict or fights is simply just not feeling heard, and that's why, these are my unproductive strategies, just because if I don't feel heard, then all 4 of these kind of come into play.